experience.
All right, welcome to the Apex Vaulting Podcast. I got a great guest for you. The person sitting next to me, Joe Lesky. He's a member of Apex Vaulting. This is episode 108. And if you enjoy the podcast, please do me a favor. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just Apex Vaulting, or on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to us there, leave us a rating, comment on YouTube, and share with your friends. If you know someone who enjoys pole vaulting and you think they would enjoy this podcast, please share it. Also, you can follow us at The Real Apex Vaulting on Instagram and just Apex Vaulting on Twitter and Facebook. We put out a lot of content. And just to go with the YouTube channel, besides all the podcasts that have been uploading, there's also a plethora of instructional videos about our drill progressions. And if you have any comments or questions, if you want a video of something, of a certain drill progression or something like that, just please email us at apexvaulting@gmail.com to give us those comments, questions, or requests. So Joe, you started coming to the club about this time last year, roughly.
Just about a year.
Yeah. Why don't you give a little background? Who are you? How old are you? What brought you to Apex Vaulting? Like, walk us through what's your background with pole vaulting?
Sure. So I'm currently 27, turning 28 in a month, actually. So I started my first session here like 4 days before I turned 27.
Okay.
And my background is that
I'm just sorry. I
Sure.
have to ask you a question. Are you training for the Olympics?
Yeah.
That's what?
Yep. I came in here. My PR was 1910, and I really wanted to break the 20 mark. And I thought this was the place. No, very much so not. But yeah, so my background is I was a full-time musician prior to COVID, and then COVID comes along, and the world changed. Everyone has their things that changed, but my particular case was you couldn't do gigs anymore because it completely went away. And as a small business owner yourself, you totally get how these things go.
I understand. Yeah.
So I did have to make a pivot just to, keep a roof over my head. And with that, my first gig was as an COVID specimen processor at an overnight lab doing the graveyard shift. So 8:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m.
Okay.
And if that doesn't depress the hell out of you, I don't know if you're human. So I started that gig literally as an oxygen mask because I needed to pay the bills. And I found that because I did music for a living, that nourished my soul in addition to, my bank account.
Right.
So when I started this job, the nourishment that I got from work just completely disappeared.
Yeah.
Because I got no satisfaction out of what I was doing. And in fact, like, it took away from what.
And it's so funny because we were talking, this Thursday 7 p.m. session. We're filming this on a Thursday after the 7 p.m. session. There's actually a couple like adults that train, and so we were having this kind of conversation where it's like, I think unfortunately a lot of people do have jobs that don't fulfill them, right? It's like you're just doing it. It's a job. It puts a roof over your head. And listen, I think that's valuable. Like, we got to have a roof over our head. We got mouths to feed if we have a family, and that's certainly important. But there's this other aspect. We need to have some sense of purpose besides that, And for me, it's like I'm in a weird position because like what I do is super fulfilling. Like you said, your musical career was. So now you're going through COVID, going back to your story. So what led you down that path for Apex?
So it was literally something I needed to do to kind of like save my mental and psychological life. I was 2 weeks into working that job, and it was the kind of job where you do the same 2-minute task over and over again for 8 hours. And I'm sitting there in a lab coat, in gloves, with like the mask on, and just going through handling people's, blood and spit, and just going through putting labels on things. And I couldn't help but have this overwhelming feeling of 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I was in front of like 1,000 people, musically directing a show, playing piano for it, running a full band and a full cast and all these things, and people coming up to me and saying, you're doing a great job, it's so awesome, and throwing money at me for the thing that was my passion. Now I'm sitting here handling people's spit and blood and just having nothing to do but think in that time.
Well, it's funny too, because like, going back to like when COVID hit, and we were closed for 4 months, and listen, I have no complaints. I know some people have had it rougher, but there was a point during that 4 months I was like, what was I doing with my life? Like, is coaching important? Right? Like in that moment, like when you were doing those musical productions, you're like, this is freaking awesome. I feel like I have a purpose. I'm important. And then COVID hits and you're like, well, now you're a non-essential worker. It's like,
Yep.
oh, I'm non-essential. I'm not important. And I started questioning my life. I'm like, why didn't I go down a path where I could have had a virtual job through my laptop? Is that more important? Is what those people doing helping more people in life? Because you had to go through that mental thought process. Are those people still employed because their jobs are important and they're helping people? Or is it just a function of where our society was at that point, And I mean, I'll tell you what, like, I know once we opened and I was coaching, and especially like not this past like holiday season, the year before. So this is like right before you, so right before you joined, right? I started getting these like Christmas cards and all this stuff from a lot of the parents, from the athletes that were coming in, who were like, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Like, you have done so, like, I didn't even realize, like, because for me, I'm in here, I'm coaching people, I'm interacting, it's social. I'm getting like, I'm almost in this like bubble of Apex.
Yeah.
But like everybody else is out in a world where they can't interact with people that are not allowed. It's frowned upon, this, that, and the other. And this was the outlet for a lot of people, which kind of going back to, like you said, like taken away from your music gigs. I was like thinking back during that 4-month period when I was closed, like, no, I have a good purpose. I'm helping people, and it goes so much deeper than just jumping higher, right? That's actually just a byproduct of what we're doing.
Pretty much,
but yeah, it was such a crazy time, man. Cause it made you question like what you did in life.
Of course, everything. And actually, to tie into what you were saying about it meaning something more than jumping high, I was 2 weeks into it, and
the
COVID lab job. And I really could not have been in a darker place, because it felt like I was such a failure. Like, the one thing that I used as a benchmark for being a successful musician was, two things: living on my own, paying my own bills with music gigs, and never having to get a 9-to-5, never having a 40-hour a week job.
Right.
And here I was sitting there 2 weeks into it, nothing but time to think on my hands, and going, this is where I ended up. And I couldn't have felt lower or more like a failure. And I realized I can't stay in this place, because if I stay in that place mentally, I don't even know what would happen. I lost my appetite. I can fuck me. I lost my appetite entirely.
Yeah.
And I needed to do something. So I started to think, what are my options? I was already studying Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, but gyms weren't open yet. Gyms were kind of opening, and they were like, you have to wear a mask, and like you should be vaccinated, and all these things.
Well, and then the jiu-jitsu scene, I think, is a little bit different, because it's people on top of people. It's a little bit different. And I think, not for nothing too, I think Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is a big enough gym and a big enough business where they had to be really, really careful about how they were opening, because there's too many eyes watching. Where, listen, if we're being honest about Apex, like, I didn't have anybody watching over me and making sure I did this or that. And look, like, I kind of made some decisions early on that I was like, I want people who want to come into the gym who are comfortable, right? Because let's face it, at the end of the day, there's no guarantees. Like,
of course,
so I want people that are willing to come in, take a risk. They want to be in this atmosphere. And, listen, pole vault, like, if you really want, you can spread out online. You're not touching each other, I guess, which, even though that doesn't really matter, but whatever. Yeah. So I'm open. So go ahead.
So the jiu-jitsu was something that I was very much so doing myself. But a training partner that I had for a while, we no longer had that opportunity to train together. Just circumstances changed. Yeah. And so that wasn't really much of an outlet. And I was like, well, what else can I do? And I thought about it. I had lost 55 pounds over the previous like 2.5 years, but it was purely for cosmetic reasons. At first, I was like, I look awful. I don't like how I look. And then as I went on, it was like more about health and staying fit. Yeah. But it was just for the sake of being in good shape. I wasn't doing anything with it. Right. So I thought, I wonder if you can pole vault as an adult. And so I just did a quick Google search. I typed in pole vault for adults, and Apex Vaulting comes up. Go on the website. I see, okay, so I see it's a pole vaulting club. It's this whole thing. Let me send an email just to see. I'm not even expecting a response, in all honesty, because you see websites all the time. People have an email, people don't respond. Right. So I send an email. I say, hey, I'm an adult. I wonder if, I jump back in high school. Could I come by and just kind of do some jumping one day? And I saw that there was an intro package. And you responded pretty quickly. It may have been the same day later in the evening.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, absolutely. We have adults come in all the time. Feel free to come by and see how you like it. We do the intro package. And I was like, I got kind of nervous. I was like, well, it was a good in theory, but
it's like calling your bluff.
Exactly.
Like, shit, now what am I gonna do?
The easy first step is like, oh, I can reach out to someone. It's another thing to show up.
Yeah.
Especially, I hadn't jumped in 9 years.
Right.
I'm old. I'm
right.
27.
Well, so before we go down that rabbit hole, because I want to discuss that. For everyone out there that's listening who's a coach and is thinking about having a club, has a club, and you're wondering, like, how do I get more clients through the door? Guys, it's not that hard. It's pole vault. There's not a lot of pole vault clubs out there. Like, we all think as pole vault clubs, like, oh, I'm competing against this pole vault club. No, you're not. That pole vault club is probably 3 hours away. Yeah. You're competing against other activities in your area. And if people do want to pole vault, you're the only show in town.
Yeah.
The other thing that you bring up, guys, having a website and having a Google business is so critical. Yeah. Like, people literally Google Apex, the Google business account comes up. They see the hours of operation. They see the phone number, the email. They see pictures. Yeah, right. So it's like, there's already that is done. I mean, literally last week, a college girl called me up and she comes in, she jumped, she loved it. And I'm talking afterwards. I'm like, oh, like, what made you choose Apex? Like, how'd you? She's like, well, like, I Googled pole vaulting clubs, and the one club, like, they didn't have a phone number and I couldn't contact them. They didn't have their practice times listed, and you had a number and you had practice times listed. So I just gave you a call. I'm like, guys, it was that simple. I have my practice times listed and my phone number, and people can reach out.
Downloadable PDF. I downloaded that. I was looking at it on my lunch break.
There's a downloadable PDF on the website. And here's the thing too, like you said, you emailed me. Listen, no more than a day goes by. If I get an email, the next day it's answered. If someone calls me or texts me, the next day it's answered. And I can't tell you, I think I'm being lazy, actually, right? Like, someone texts me or calls me, let's say like 8 o'clock. So I'm busy coaching the 7 p.m. session. And a lot of times by the time this gets done, it's like 10:30, 11. Yeah. I'm not going to call someone back at 11 o'clock at night. I'll call them the next day at noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And people, oh, thank you for getting back to me so soon. I'm like, so soon?
Yeah,
this is a day. I'm thinking about, like, I feel bad that I couldn't pick up that phone call at the moment, right? But it's like, it's that easy. If you just get back to people, you have a website, a Google business, you answer your email on time, you can grow your business. Yeah. It's not that hard.
And to build off of that, as a musician, like an independent musician, the amount of times that I've shown up on time to a gig, and people go, oh, I can't believe you're a musician and you showed up on time. Look at this. I can't believe that that's all it takes. And I show up in a suit if it's like the type of gig that requires a suit. You've seen me come in here in suits after sessions. I come in a suit, I get there on time. And regardless of how well I play, that impression, people are going to hire you back a lot more often. You show up late, you look shaggy, whatever it is. So it's entirely that idea.
And that's going to, that could tie in perfectly, and we'll go back, but like, just because it's a great segue. I remember the first day you came in here. I take you through the practice. What was your impression that first day?
Yeah, no, your shit immediately. Yeah.
Right. But like, something that I don't know if you even remember this, but I remember you walked in with a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu shirt.
Yes.
And so, for those of you who listen to the podcast, I don't know if I've mentioned this enough, but I like MMA, I watch UFC, and I'm definitely a fan of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, because I've even posted something with Hickson Gracie.
Hickson,
one of his Joe Rogan clips, I posted on our Instagram, and I really love what they've done with Jiu-Jitsu. And listen, I know it's a little bit lofty goal, but like, I'd love to do that with pole vault. What they've done for Jiu-Jitsu, I want to do for pole vault. And so I'd love to grow it like that. And I said to you, like, what did you think? And you said, you know what? This honestly reminds me a lot of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep.
And why did you say that? What are the parallels between what we do here at Apex and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu?
It's very technical and very sequential. So the fact that when you go through a technique, when you first learn a new technique at Gracie, they go through and show you exactly what it looks like at first. And then they go, here's how we do it slowly, bit by bit, in full detail. And you go slowly. And the way that you broke down even everything from jumping drill to the running drills, even stretching and then getting to the actual jump and talking about what takeoff is like, letting the left hand come up, so much reminded me of the way that they go through it. And it's because it works. You go slowly, you're sequential, and you talk about it in that way. It is a proven system, and you buy into it.
Well, so, again, to build off of that, for people who are listening, again, if you're a coach and you're like, man, I'd like to grow my club or, whatever. And we'll definitely talk about growing your club through adults that train and talk about that specifically. But I can't tell you how many times when either a new client who's an adult or an athlete that's a child and their parent is watching, I literally can tell as I go through the running drills, which is like real early. It's like we're warming up and I'm explaining the running drills, and I can literally see like jaws drop from parents who are like, what? Like you almost have that, the parents have that look on their face like, hey babe, I don't think I know how to run. Like, should we sign up for this too? And that's the thing, when you break things down. And I think too often in the pole vault community, because there's so few people coaching, because there's so few places that you can go to. I think a lot of places are just like, all right, let's like jog and skip a little bit. Nothing's really watched or coached. And then it's like, all right, let's grab a pole. Let's, start at 3, back to a 5. All right, let's do full approach. And it's like, well, if I don't know how to pole vault, how the hell am I doing any of that? You know what I mean? And it's not broken down enough. And for me also, I know some people might be like, well, Bronco, you're talking about beginners. What if you have people who know how to pole vault? I think you have to develop a system where you can matriculate new people into a group with a mixed ability level. And the thing is, even those higher level people, I think it's great for them to listen to the intro again. It's great for them to listen for the explanations. It's great for them to show drills to people. And they need to have their jump broken down too. Again, I did a tweet, and some people got mad at me, but it's like, if all you do is a couple like drills and then you go back to your full, that gets old real fast. Going to the jujitsu analogy, it's like if all you did was spar, you just roll all the time. You can't learn then. You're not going to develop new skills, and that's going to get boring. Once you get tapped enough times, or you tap the same training partner over and over and you're not learning anything, if I can't level up, like I'm bored. I beat the game. I need a new game, right? Like I'll use a video game analogy. Maybe more people will understand that. But it's like, think about it. Like when you were a kid, you're playing video games, you play a game, you beat it. Once you beat it, you're like, this is trash now. Like I need a new game. Like, right? So it's like, if that's all you do, if there's no more layers to your system, then you're going to lose clients, right? Those athletes are gonna be like, all right, I have nothing else to learn from this person. Now, maybe they don't leave the sport. Maybe they just go to a different pole vaulting club. That might happen too, So we kind of went off on a tangent there. So, okay. So I email you back. I call you on your bluff. What happens next? Take us through the thought process there. So you get that answer back.
I get the email back, and I give a time that I can come by, and you say that works great. Let's do it. And I remember distinctly talking to a friend of mine that night and saying, I'm going to be going pole vaulting next week. And he actually did track with me growing up. In high school, he was a long distance, and I was doing pole vaulting. And doing pole vault. You've seen the video of my technique back then. It was pole vaulting. But I told him that, and he was like, really? And I was like, didn't expect that, huh? And he's like, no, I would not have expected that to be what came out of your mouth. That's really interesting that, 9 years later going into it. And I was like, I think this could be really good. And I finally had something to look forward to, something concrete that was like, kind of feel nervous, but this is exciting. Like I'm going to be pole vaulting. I don't even know what that looks like on the first day, but I'm going to be pole vaulting. And so the week goes by. I have worked the previous evening or previous morning. And I tell the guy that I was friends with there, I was like, I'm going pole vaulting tomorrow. He's like, what's pole vaulting? I was like, that's a common reaction that you get. It's where you run with the pole when you go up in the air. And he was like, oh, all right. And then we kept working, doing our jobs. But in my head, I'm just like, oh, this is really something. Get to the day of, and I pull up, I walk in the door, and I see people doing the running drills because he got there a little bit, like a couple minutes late, because I had a little trouble finding the place because I'm a simpleton.
Also, okay, we're in an industrial park. It's not the easiest to
so
find.
Whatever it is, I walk in the door and they're doing warm-ups. So
the hip
down
walk and
running
jog.
Yep. And I walk in the door and I'm immediately like, these individuals are in very good shape. Okay. All right. And so I walk through and I see you and I'm like, I think that could be Bronco. Okay. Let me go over.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, I'm Joe Lesky. I'm the new one here. Oh yeah, great. No. All right. Let me walk you through some stuff. They're going to be stretching and I'll talk you through some things, go through it and still have the nerves. And I'm like, everyone here again is like in very good shape. And I'm walking in and I'm like, I'm not in bad shape, but like now I'm getting a little like, okay.
Self-conscious.
Because even in my own personal life, you don't find people in pole vault shape walking around the streets. Like it isn't like in that apex bubble idea.
Yeah.
This is how people are when they come here and like, or at least striving to become.
Right.
That is not the real world. And so in my group of friends, in my circles that I traveled in, I was the guy who was like, oh yeah, Joe is like, oh, he goes to the gym all the time. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I walk in here and I'm like, I'm gonna stand up a little straighter. I'm gonna have to work on myself. And even just having that push and we start jumping and you're so systematic with how you go through it that the whole time I'm online, I'm going through things, I'm learning a little new thing every time I go and trying to like think about it more and more. And then I'm starting to talk to the people on the line with me. And Lily was actually there that day. I remember talking to her and everyone was so nice and so technically thinking through things and going up. And I just remember thinking, and I told this to people that very night, this is my crowd. This is the type of people that I want to be around because it takes a certain, I don't know, I don't want to use the wrong term here. There's something a little off about people who like pole vaulting, who are willing to sprint with a pole down a runway, jump in the air, fly up with nothing to protect you aside from your own skill level and the pole.
Right.
And
there is a little bit like, I think, look, like obviously if you're coaching very safely, I think you take a lot of the risk out of it. But there
face value appearance wise,
right.
It seems.
But I still think there's even that moment, especially like the first time, right? It's like you could, like, we always start everybody out at one left. And there's that moment of like, okay, wait, I'm gonna jump and this is gonna go in the and then I'm not gonna go like backwards, like, and I'm like, no, you're good, just like hold it here, jump up, your hands are gonna go up, you're gonna get in the pit, and they're like, and you have to like overcome that fear. And the thing is like, and I always mention this to new clients that come in, and even I'm sorry, but like the reason some people might be like, why does he keep saying the word client, you know? Oh, wow. Anyway, so, you know, I don't want to use the term even athlete or kid, right? Because here we have adults that come in and they are clients and they're people that are very important to me. And I want to help service my clients. And I think if more coaches think that way and you start to approach it that way, you're going to get different results. And so, but what I always tell the clients is like, look, life really is all about overcoming fears. Like when you think about when you're a little kid, it's like you're scared of the dark. You're literally scared of a dark room and you have to overcome that fear. Like, think about it. You're a little kid. Maybe you're like 3, 4, 5 years old. You're like, man, I really have to go pee, but it's dark. Do I just yell, mom? She's gonna get pissed again, right? I did that like a couple nights in a row. She's like, dude, just turn on the lights and go to the bathroom. Some kids piss themselves. You know what I mean? Like they're so scared. They're like, I'm not getting out of bed. I'll just piss myself. Right. So you have to overcome that fear of the dark, to turn on the lights, walk to the bathroom by yourself, you know, whatever. And so like every step of the way, there's all these risks in life and you have to be able to manage those risks, but then also overcome fear. Because if you're never willing to take any risk, you're never going to get any reward. And so like, I feel like that moment of like, I'll have kids who like, they'll just let go of the pole and run through, right, from a 1 even. Or they'll jump up but let go of the pole. And then, you know, and then when they finally like jump up, hold on, and their hands go above their head, you're like, all right, you did it, like nice. And then they've overcome that fear barrier, you know? And I think that's a really nice thing about pole vault, because there is a little bit of fear. And when we openly talk about it, you can help people start to overcome their fears and they can now apply that to the rest of their life. And I think that's huge.
Oh yes. And the overarching amount of parallels that there are between pole vault and jujitsu and real life, because they're very closely related. Like in my head, I compartmentalize them in the same way, just because it's very technical. It is physically demanding, but it's not, you're not doing completely foreign movements. Like it all makes sense at the end of the day. You just have to work through it and get used to it.
Right.
And it applies so much in day-to-day life that
Yeah.
I can't even articulate it properly.
Well, and to go off with like the analogy with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, I mean, I love listening to a bunch of Hicks and Gracie podcasts where he talked about, his father developing the jiu-jitsu because his father was a very weak person, had some health issues when he was young. And so he had to develop a system of jiu-jitsu that could work for even the weak person.
Yeah.
And consequently, if it works really well with weak people, it works even better with strong people, right? Yeah. And so the way I've always approached pole vault is like, I always think like, I've got to get everybody off the ground. I've got to get everybody to be able to do this. And look, can everybody, jump as high as Mondo? Definitely not. Like that's not realistic. But can you get everybody to pole vault at some level? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was just at the Masters meet this past weekend. I mean, you see people of all ages and even what was cool, there was definitely a couple guys that I saw pole vaulting who are doing like the heptathlon or something like that, the multi-event. And they're not pole vaulters, but they just picked up and started learning, and they're maybe in their 40s, and they're maybe not even in that traditional pole vault shape. Sure. But it's like they're getting off the ground, they're clearing bars, and they're having fun.
Yes.
And they're having fun. And those life lessons that you're talking about definitely can apply. Like if that, let's say like some 48-year-old guy who's like, trying Masters track and field for like the first time, and they've never pole vaulted, and they have to overcome that fear of trying pole vault, and then also like not like danger fear, but like, oh my God, if I know high, I'm not going to score any points and I'm going to suck at this meet. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of different things going on in that person's head. I think it's so cool to watch that person overcome all those struggles, like the fear of maybe getting hurt, but then also it's like, I don't want to mess up my meet and, so on and so forth. I think there's definitely a lot there. And again, I think for all those people trying to grow clubs, maybe we need to stop thinking so much about those state champs. That will happen.
Yeah.
The right athlete walks into your building, you'll get that state champ. But can you help everybody? Can you develop a system where you can help that person who's coming in at the lowest level, who maybe they can't do a pull-up, maybe they can't even squat their own body weight, whatever the case may be, and can you help that person technically get better and physically improve? Because even the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu system, I'm sure they talk about physical fitness too, right?
Yeah, and it's exactly like you said about like if a stronger, weaker opponent can be successful with this, then it translates really well to those athletes.
Yeah.
And I found personally that because I was in good shape and I had like good mobility, if you have good hip mobility and you're doing jujitsu, it is a vastly different world than if you have some more struggles. Because even like doing an arm bar, if you're on top of someone in mount and you do an arm bar, you have to throw your hips around in order to get to the side of them.
Right.
And a lot of people have this mental barrier, and it's because they don't have the same hip mobility as other people do. When they were going through the lesson for the first time that I was watching it, they were very much so like, all right, and if you have trouble with this, then really do these things and like really feel like you're whipping around and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I got it like the first time doing it. It's just because I had that hip mobility from like whatever else I was doing in life.
Right.
So it does have that advantage, but everyone can get there.
Right. Well, that's kind of like, look, like when we introduce a new person into a group, let's say we do our rollover drills, you could tell right away whether someone has good upper body strength or they don't have good upper body strength. Well, that person afterwards, we introduce them to TRX rows, dumbbell rows, we start to build up their upper back strength. And it's amazing. Like there's one girl that started this past summer who, when she first came in, her upper body strength was not there. And it was very difficult for her to, like, we couldn't even do a swing to the belly. We couldn't do a flyaway and turn, land on the stomach. She could just barely swing. And now today she wrapped 9 from 2 lefts. And yeah, that's pretty good. And it's like, obviously she's also been very diligent. She's worked through the TRX rows. She could do banded pull-ups, band assistant pull-ups now. She keeps doing her rows. She does carries, and it's just amazing to see the person go through that physical and technical transformation. And it's also amazing to see the confidence that instills in a person.
Yes.
Because now they can tell that it's like, wow, like even if I can't do something today, that doesn't mean I can't do it tomorrow.
Of course, or 3 months from now.
Right. If I just keep grinding away and put my head down and go through what I need to go through, I can get there someday. It is possible.
Yeah, and that's actually something just to bring this up because might as well. I tore my meniscus back in January, and
not pole vaulting, by
not
the way.
pole, no, make
Not
that clear,
pole
not pole vaulting. I tore my meniscus in January, and it's now March 24th.
Right.
So I tear it January 13th. I get surgery
Wait,
February
can
17th.
I just ask?
Yeah.
Wait, so you tore your meniscus? What are you doing at Apex
That's a
on
good
Thursday
point.
night?
You know, I was bored. I just figured I'd come over. No, so getting to that point,
Go ahead.
I tear my meniscus, which means I can no longer run,
Right.
let alone walk. And so I'm thinking about, well, what the hell do I do now? And once the pain subsides to the point where I can like tolerate it and I can be like somewhat mobile,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I can either use this as an excuse to be like, oh, well, I get to take a break
Just
and
take
get
time
fat and
off.
just take my time and all
Yeah.
that. Or I can go, you know, Bronco does go on about upper body strength.
Yeah.
What if I took this time, because the recovery for a torn meniscus, if you get the repair, which I did, is 4 to 6 months. If I just devote myself to upper body lifting in that time, and then eventually transition to high bar stuff as well, and like doing a lot of like off the ground drills to the best that I can with the limited stuff, I'm going to be in a much better position than I was even before I injured myself, because that combined with PT for the knee, I'm going to come back way better off. And with the better numbers on weights, bench press, weighted pull-ups and all that than I ever have, that sounds appealing. And plus mentally, I need that push. So what I got from pole vaulting when I was doing the overnight COVID lab job still exists when me. I need that. I need that kind of thing. And lifting is providing that because it's for that purpose.
Right. And so a couple things. One, you know, and I've said this on previous podcasts, like when I've had Calvin Hartman on, you know, they say you need 3 places in life. It's like everybody's got their job. That's one place. Then you have your home. And then you need that third like place, which is home away from home.
Yeah.
You know, and that I strive to provide that here. I mean, even tonight you saw someone come in that I don't think you've ever met, Andy, before. Andy jumped with me a long time. He just popped in to say hi to the gang, everybody who was jumping, and it was great to see him. And I think everybody who's ever been to Apex, you know, they know what this place is, and they know they're welcome. They can come in and say hi, and you know, or get back into it if they want to start jumping again. You know, and like you, I've had several athletes over the years that for whatever reason, maybe a torn hip labrum, maybe a torn ACL, whatever the case may be, as soon as they weren't like bedridden anymore, you know what I mean? Like the surgery's done, they can start doing some stuff. They're coming in here, 1, just to watch pole vaulting. 2, like you said, doing upper body stuff, or if it's upper body injury, do lower body stuff. And they're not making any excuses, like you said. They're finding ways to do the things that they can do so that when they come back better than ever. You know, and it's like, I mean, 1, I'm super grateful. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm grateful that people get that way, you know, that's what they want. And I definitely like am open to it and want people to do that. You know, I want people to come in, like,
you
even
facilitate that environment.
That even if you can't pole vault, you know, you can do other stuff, come in and get some work in, you know what I mean? And I think that's awesome. And I think also the camaraderie is great. Just to go specifically with your situation, I mean, what were you benching prior to the surgery, and what are you benching now? Which, keep in mind, because of the surgery, he's got his legs up on the bench, so there's no leg drive. So yeah, can you go over that?
Sure. Yeah. So prior to the surgery, I actually wasn't benching. Like, I wasn't putting a focus on like proper technical benching. So this is actually a perfect excuse to be like, well, let me learn how to actually properly bench. So something in the range of like, I was in the 6 to 8 rep range at the time. So it was in the range of like 135 for 6 and like a tough 6. Now I've been pretty diligent about it for the past like 3.5 weeks is when I think I've been allowed to do it. And even in that time, I just did, this was my first time back at 6 to 8 in that time, because I started at 8 to 10. I just did 165 for 7.
Huge improvement.
And that's insane to me.
What I also think, like, you know, a lot of times, like you said, like if somebody gets hurt, right, they get injured, or, you know, it could be as simple as like a pulled hamstring, right? I think, like you said, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can't train. I can't train. And then they use that as an excuse to take days off, weeks off. And then, like you said, then the diet slips.
You don't have to be as diligent.
Right.
Absolutely.
But it's like, I think in your case, you know, you took it and you're like, well, let me work on some of my upper body weaknesses.
Yeah.
And what I think is amazing, in very short time, think about how much your bench has gone up.
Yeah.
Which I think mentally that puts you in a different place where, you know, when you've been hitting these numbers, like you're probably patting yourself on the back, but then also halfway through the drive home, you're like, shit, why wasn't I doing this before the surgery?
Yeah,
right?
no,
You know what I mean? There's
yeah.
that part, because now you're like, well, if I'm doing this after a surgery and I'm
Yeah.
injured and I can't even use leg drive to
Yeah.
bench, what the hell was I doing before?
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to take this. I mean, I'm not perfect with it, but I'm
Yeah,
trying to take it as like this was a good thing in the grand scheme of things, because it was the reset that I needed to go. If you can't do something that you love to do for a period of time, because it is finite, you
Yeah.
know, unless you get hit by a truck or something, it is finite. But if you can't do it for a period of time, what are you going to fill that space with? And if that means taking a microscope to what can I do to be in a better position for that once I can get back, that's worth doing. But you don't do it unless you have that kind of like, you need an impetus in order to have that happen. And I'd rather I read a book than tear my meniscus, but you know, whatever, we'll take it. This was an excuse to go, let me really work on what I can work on. And that happened to be upper body stuff. And I'm grateful. I'm trying to be grateful for it.
Yeah.
As tough
No,
as that is.
listen, I think even more than the actual lifting numbers or the gaining strength, I think the mental changes are important.
Yeah.
And that is something to be grateful for. Because
I'm sticking with this once I get back. I'm not going to drop doing all of this once I can jump again. Yeah.
And I think you'll have a different focus and a mental attitude once you're ready to go full out. And you know, we've had plenty of nights where we talk about several different topics, and I always bring up people like David Goggins. You know, David Goggins is a great example. I mean, he's had videos where he's like, hey, listen, like my knee's messed up or I had this surgery and I can't run right now. But he's like, I ain't gonna be sitting on my ass. I'm gonna find the things that I can do and work on that. You know, I will be grinding with something that I can do.
Yes.
And I think that's a very, very important mental attitude. And, you know, I think about even like over the years, my shift as a coach, as a business owner, as a mentor, that's been an amazing shift in me where I think, you know, especially when I was a younger coach, like I didn't know strength and conditioning as well. So it's like if somebody was hurt, like I didn't know what to do with them, you know, but it's like now it's always like, no, like we can do something else then. I mean, even, you know, similar situation, one of my high school senior girls, you know, she's a 12-footer and she's had a foot injury from I think overuse between gymnastics and pole vault. And so she didn't jump this indoors. Listen, I'm probably more proud of her now than I was the day she jumped 12. I mean, listen, the 12-foot jump is a 12-foot jump. Like that's awesome, but that's just one day. She has literally come in every single session, regardless of the fact that she can't jump. And she's been doing high bar. She's been doing strength and conditioning work. She still does her pole drops. You know what I mean? Like she's doing everything she possibly can. She has immersed herself in the training.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, like, I really feel bad for whoever has to compete against her this spring.
No, and I've noticed
she's a monster.
Yeah.
She's a monster. And I mean, she's biting at the opportunity to just get back and start jumping. But the thing is, she hasn't wasted time. No. Like I think a lot of, and again, this is a high school senior. I think a lot of high school seniors will be enjoying high school senior year. Yeah. They'd be going to parties and stuff, getting out of shape, and they would come back and they would look like garbage. And the thing is, like, I've even seen it where, you know, I've had situations where, you know, people hear from like, you know, a doctor or PT, hey, you got to take time off, and that's okay. Take time off, but you got to do what you can do to stay strong. And I've seen people come back and they're like shocked at what their grips are, what their pulls are. And I'm like, bro, you're out of shape, you know, and it doesn't mean getting fat. Sometimes you just lose muscle mass, you get skinny, and then it's like, you can't move the same grips, you can't move the same pulls. And so it's like, it's going to take time. But if you really take complete time off, you don't do anything, you're really going to be behind the 8 ball, and you're going to be playing catch up. But yeah, I think here, the culture that we've established, I mean, like, imagine you didn't come in at all and you just came back first day, and then you were like kind of being a sourpuss in line. You're like, damn, I can't jump on my poles. Like, I think Calvin or someone would be like, bro, you haven't jumped in 6 months.
Oh, Calvin would absolutely.
Yeah, you haven't jumped in 6 months. You haven't worked out. Like, what did you expect was going to happen the first day back? And you'd be like, it's kind of like a slap in the face. But it's like, you know, I don't think anybody would say it in a mean, you know, way, but they were like, it's real. This is real. This is, I don't know, this is what the expectation is. You know?
And like, I'm actually genuinely excited that more likely than not, the first day that I'm, you know, doctor approved to go full out and like go with pole vaulting, I will be in a better position than I ever have been with jumping. And it's not because I'm going to be, you know, faster. Obviously, I'm probably going to take some time to get back to the speed that I was at, but upper body wise, being able to pull swing is going to be so much more physically possible for me than it ever has been. And that's not something that just happens accidentally. That's something that I'm actively pursuing. Is I want the first day to go, this feels a lot different in a good way.
Well, and I think, listen, I think watching the vault and talking about it, you know, and I know you watch videos, but then watching people jump in here, and then we've had discussions, like we've watched video together of like Pete Roach's jump, and it's like, okay, well, let's look at this. What is he doing in this jump, you know? And so I think that stuff is all very, very valuable because those mental reps count too.
Yes. And that's big with jujitsu too. So Henner Gracie, who's one of the two brothers who like really expanded Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to what it is now. He, when he was 18 years old, he was like just earning his black belt, hurt his lower back, and was like, he could not roll. He could not do technical stuff for 6 months. It was just
so
PT.
He just ate donuts and
ate
milkshakes.
No, he talked about it because him and his brother are like this, and they developed business, and they would roll constantly for 6 months. He had to sit on the sidelines. And he said without those 6 months, he would not be as good as he is now. And it's because he got to sit there and watch. He got to see his brother, and he called him the hero in tornado, and like how he would just like roll with people, but he started to be able to almost see it in slower motion. And the fact that he had to sit there and just watch, he got so much out of that. And when he got back on the mats, it clicked even better than he already was.
Well, so describe, you know, talking about like seeing the like jujitsu like that. I think also with the vault, you know, when someone goes through a good system and like our system, it's like having a different operating system, to be honest. No, it's like Apple versus Android, right? It's just different, right?
100%.
And I think once you've been through our system, it's like, it's so simple. You watch a jump and you're like, oh, that person skipped takeoff. Oh, they didn't finish the swing. They went to the turn too early, you know, whatever, so on and so forth. And it's just amazing, you know, the way, you know, mentally it works, and people start to see that stuff as they start leveling up through our program. It's just, I don't know. It's really amazing to watch that kind of stuff unfold. I kind of want to go back to this kind of question though, right? So you're an adult, you're training in pole vault. I mean, like, you know, we joked about like, oh, are you training for the Olympics? You know, like what is the goal for, I mean, I think you're touching upon it, you know, it's giving you things that are not maybe tangible values, right? Like you're not going to jump, maybe it's not jump a certain bar. Maybe it's not, you know, win this meet, but like, maybe just talk about that more. Like, why as an adult should someone come train? Especially, I mean, your case is a little bit different. You jumped 11.6 in high school. You're certainly going to PR, you know, but why would someone vault as an adult, you know?
So there's a simple answer and a less simple answer, which actually Pat, Kendra's brother, Pat, he asked me one time this exact question. He was like, I always find it so interesting why adults would do this. So why do you do this, Joe? And the simple answer is, I want to go high. Pole vaulting is incredibly fun. Like at the end of the day, it is just so cool. It is so unique. Flying through the air, the idea of that and being able to go higher and higher as you do it is just really cool. And it's adrenaline junkie fuel. Like at the end of the day, it is as simple as that in one regard. The more complex answer is it's those parallels and how it translates to the rest of life. I now have something that I can work towards, not just for a higher bar, but like, what can I do better for this incredibly challenging thing? One of the main reasons I love it is it is miserably difficult. It is so difficult to like really get good with pole vaulting. And I'm a big subscriber to the theory of if it's not very difficult, it's not worth doing, that whole concept.
Right.
And this is such a worthwhile pursuit in that way. It's an excuse to stay in good shape. It's an excuse to have a different social group than I've had in the past. And it's something that I've really enjoyed and leaned on is the social aspect. And I can't stress enough how much meaning that is given into my life, because I'm a big fan. So Jordan Peterson talks all the time about investing in meaning rather than pursuing happiness, because happiness comes and goes. You cannot achieve just happiness, but you can always have meaning. Everything you're doing can be investing in having a meaningful life, and that's what you can lean on.
Right.
This is something that has provided meaning into my life in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And I can't articulate it exactly what, like, it's hard to put into words, but as a whole, it has given me such a good thing to invest more meaning into. And it's something that I do lean on now, like almost a year later, even though I haven't jumped in 2 months.
Well, it's interesting. Like you talk about meaning versus maybe happiness, right? And there's this one video that I really like to share with people sometimes. I think it's like some former CEO of Google. And he talks about this idea of like happiness versus fun.
Yes.
And he talks about happiness being like a sense of contentment with your life. Like you are content with your life. And fun is you kind of ignoring your life and do right. So that doesn't change whether you're happy or not.
Yeah.
And, you know, so he goes through this explanation, but going back to what you said, like meaning versus happiness. I was watching this one video of Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, and he was talking about how someone was like, bro, it's not so serious. Like, why are you taking this so serious? He's like, basically like, F you, like, I'm gonna, what do you want me to be serious about? This is what I'm serious about. This is serious for me. I want to be serious. And I get the thing from people all the time. Bro, just pole vault, like relax. I remember one time even talking to a former athlete one time. I was on the phone and they're like, you know, Bronco, I used to, you know, pole vault used to be so important to me. And it's like, it still is for you. They were saying it almost in like a derogatory way. Like you're still a kid.
You haven't moved on.
Like you're still a little kid. And it's like, well, one, it's my business. It's literally my business. Secondly, it provides great meaning in my life because I feel like I'm helping others. Maybe I'm not happy all the time. Like obviously I get pissed if something's going wrong. Yeah, I get fired up. But it all has meaning behind it, right? Like even me getting fired up, it's because something's important. Like I remember last year, oh my goodness, I'm at Division III Nationals and they really freaking screwed up. Like they did, like they lined the girls up and they go through the bios. Like this is Sally from, you know, freaking Oshkosh Bagosh College and wherever.
Love that.
And she's got 4 All-Americans, blah, blah, and they go down the line. It takes like 10, 15 minutes to do this. And then my athlete is up first and they started the clock immediately, a minute. She hasn't moved for 15 minutes. And now that's it. She's going to go. No, she's got to warm up. Like she's got to do some skips. Like I literally started losing my shit. I started like shaking the coach's box. Like they had these plastic barricades. I'm like, hey, this is bullshit. I'm like, you are not timing her out. This is absolute bullshit. And I didn't care. Like all the coaches were looking at me like, oh my God, he's got to calm down. Yeah. And it was so funny because one of the officials like taps another official like, I think we should start the clock again. I'm not saying I was going to throw that barricade, but maybe I made that guy think I was.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you're lifting, so you can in the future.
No, but like, and they restarted the clock and she didn't get timed out, which was critical, and she ended up getting All-American. But anyway, so that being said, I think the meaning is important. And it's like, I think what's really sad, and kind of going back to your story about like what led you to be like, all right, I can't do jujitsu right now. The gyms aren't open. What can I do? And I think it's really sad when you get to a point in your life, and especially to all the adults out there that are listening to this, and you're like, wow, like I hate my job. My job sucks. I don't have anything to look forward to at home. You know, whatever your home life is.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
If there's no meaning anywhere in your life, you're like, what's the big deal? What does it all matter? That's a rough spot to be in.
It is.
And so being able to find something where you're like, you know what? I really look forward to this. I've got some goals here. There's maybe short-term goals. Like I want to jump X by this month.
Yeah.
long-term goals, I want to be in better shape. I want to have, better strength, better speed. I want to mentally be in a better spot, or long-term, I want to figure out these technical things. I want to level up in this sport. Create a better social network, right? Like you said, I think those are all really important things. And I think honestly, like I could make an argument that those things are far more important than qualifying for USAs.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I think I told you this story. Someone hit me up about like they wanted my opinion on like polls and stuff. And I kind of had the conversation with the person. I was kind of trying to dissuade them from buying polls, because I was like, listen, like I feel like, yo, it's your life. You do whatever you want. But you're going down a path where I think, unfortunately, like, let's say as a male, 18.6, let's say as a female, 15.6, like, yo, by all means, do whatever you want. But I've seen far too many people in those like ranges where they're chasing this, like trying to go to USA thing and whatever. And some of them, they even get there and they're like, what was the point?
Yeah.
Right. Because even for me, coaching wise, I thought at a certain point, like, well, if I coach someone to jump high enough, or if we win nationals, or that'll solve all my other problems in life. I'll have more friends, more people will like me, or maybe I'll get a girlfriend, or maybe I'll make more money, or what. Odd, none of those things changed. Absolutely zero.
Yeah.
And if we think about like jumping, I mean, look, like we could probably count on one or two hands how many people actually make a good living pole vaulting, right? As a professional pole vaulter, right? And so like, I'm just like always leery of those people. It's like, well, you're chasing that USAs, or, trying to qualify for Olympics, and that's cool. That's cool. I don't want you to be 28, 30, 35 years old and looking back like, why the hell did I do this? I mean, Ronda Rousey, of UFC fame, she was undefeated for some time, champion. In her autobiography, she writes about how once she medaled at the Olympics, she was literally living out of her car.
Yeah.
And she won the medal, and she's like, shit, like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Because she was not setting up her life for after that at all. And so now she finishes the Olympics. I'm still homeless. Like, I mean, thank God the UFC exists.
Yeah.
Right. Like, thank God women started to fight professionally, and she ended up making a good living for herself, and she's kind of set now.
Yeah.
And I hope she's doing very well and happy with her life. But like, what if that didn't happen?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm always concerned for those people vaulting in that situation. Because I think if you're an adult jumping to be a part of a community, stay in shape, give your life more meaning, something outside of work, I think those are all very, very valuable things. To me, that's like priceless.
Yeah, and that is absolutely what I get out of coming here. And it's not just what I get out of coming here; it's what I get on the drive back home. It's what I get on the drive here. I live 40 minutes away. There is easily reason for me to go, I don't want to make that drive. 40 minutes each way. I mean, oof, come on.
I'm sure there's a Planet Fitness like 5 minutes from
yeah. And then I could get those purple machines. I love purple.
Yeah.
But instead, I have never once gone, oh, fuck, I don't want to make that drive. And this is probably the only thing that I have had that experience with of, wow, I actually have to just budget the time, but it's never like, oh, I got to make sure I have enough time. It's always like, okay, so leave it this time. And then I do it. And then I listen to something on the drive up, and I'm thinking about what I'm doing. On the drive back, I think about what I did that session, what I'd like to do for the next one, what conversations we had, how grappling went that day, like whatever it is. And
sure.
It's something that, again, I can't articulate it because I don't have the words for it, but it really is a worthwhile thing to invest into for meaning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I feel like we've gone. Is there anything else that you would like to mention before I close this off?
JoeLesky.com if you need a musician to. No,
well, I just, I don't want to keep you much later. I know it's late. But I think that's huge, what you're saying. And I think for anybody out there that, again, is like, maybe like, well, I really want to grow my club. I really want to have more clients. I would like to make a living off of coaching, right? Or make a living off of pole vault, and that's opening a club, in my opinion. you have to have that higher meaning.
Yeah.
If it's literally just people coming in and trying to wrap a higher bungee or jump a little bit higher, if that's all that's it, there's nothing else to be gained. How long are you going to keep a client?
No, like
You-
maybe 2-3 weeks, 2-3 months, but not
Yeah,
much
or
beyond that. Yeah.
maybe, you know, like if they're in high school, okay, they'll jump through high school, and then once they get their scholarship or they're in college, they're done, right? But the thing is, like, when you make it more than just wrapping a bungee, you know, like I listen to this gym business podcast where they talk about these CrossFit gyms, and this one gym has the 100-month club.
Wow.
So clients that have been at the gym 100 months, you know, and she writes a thank you card and gives them a gift card and all this kind of stuff, which is cool. But like that idea of keeping clients that long, I mean, first of all, the impact you must have on someone's life when you coach them that long. And Calvin just left, who I think I've been coaching Calvin for 10 years.
He's in the 120-month club.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm so grateful, you know what I mean, to be able to be a part of someone's life like that, and to get, you know, help them find meaning, you know, in so much more. Cause I think what happens here goes beyond pole vault so much more. And I think that's how you build a very strong business. You have to care about people more than just their PR. Pole vaulters are not just their PR. There's so much more.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, there's some people I've coached that haven't had an amazing PR, but I know I've helped give them meaning in their life, and they've given me a lot of meaning in my life. They've helped me out. And so I think once you start to wrap your head around that, and I know this has been said by many people, but it's like, if you could start to think about how you can service people better, you could be of service to others, that's how your club grows. You want to be of service to as many people in as many ways as possible. You need to branch out. You need to level up as a coach, as an individual. I mean, when I started this club, and I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast about this, but it's like, I was out of shape. I was 190 pounds. I was pretty chubby. I wasn't very strong. And, you know, I was starting the club as a business full time, and I was focused on the business aspect, and I let things slip. Now I'm not that same person. You know what I mean? And because I've leveled up every step of the way. And that's why as a club, we've kept leveling up. And that's really what it takes, because when you are a coach, you are a leader, and no one's going to want to be led by someone who doesn't level up.
Yeah.
If you're not leveling up, why would your athletes level up? Like, you need to take it to the next level. And I'm sorry if someone's out there listening to this, but Bronco, I don't have time to work out, or but Bronco, I only have so many hours, or but Bronco, I don't know this, that. You can make all the excuses you want. But if you want to be a coach, if you want to be someone that's important in people's lives, you have to level up. You have to show people what is possible when they really grind, when they really work hard. Because people, and I always, you know me, I always tell people, I'm like, look, I'm a terrible athlete. Like, I should not beat you in anything.
Yeah, that is the
right?
line, is you're a better athlete than me. Yeah, that is
right. And I'm being honest too. It's just like everything that I've ever done is just because I'm like, I put my head down and I'm just grinding, you know? So again, we'll do this another time for sure.
Absolutely.
And we'll expand on some of these ideas. But Joe, thank you again for doing the podcast. For everybody listening or watching out there, thank you so much. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Also, you can follow us on Instagram at The Real Apex Vaulting, or Apex Vaulting on Twitter and Facebook. And if you have any comments or questions, please email us at apexvaulting@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
And he will respond.
I will.